Hey there, crafty friends. Welcome back. It's Sandi McIver here, and today I'm going to be playing with the Flickering Candlelight Layering Stencils, the Cheerful Panda Moments stamp and die set, and the sentiment is going to be with the Birthday and Wish hot foil and die set, all from Syberia Designs. Here's the cardstock pieces you're going to need to play along. I have a piece of Lilac Blossom 3x4 1/4. I have a card base, which is 8x8 1/4, and I'm showing you here that the other little white piece is the piece that I'm going to use for the pandas. I have a piece of Waterfall, which is 3.5 by 7 3/4. I have a piece of white, which is 3 1/4 by 7 1/4. Ink colors for today, we are going to be playing with Iris, Sunbeam, Ocean, and from PinkFresh, Sparkling Rose. I'm also going to be using Simon Says Stamps Intense Black to stamp the pandas. But we are starting with the candles, and you're going to need some blending brushes. I'm going to use the Waffle Flowers grip mat again, and I've also got it on top of my stencil mat. I'm kind of liking this combination. I've got the ledge in the bottom right hand corner, and I am putting my card front right into the center. These are long, skinny stencils, so we need something to stick and hold them on either side. When you take the stencils out of the package, you'll see that there's a little legend there starting with 1 through 4, showing you what the stencils do. And of course, we're going to start with number 1 as soon as I find it, because mine are all mixed up. And I'm going to be starting with the pink, so that's the PinkFresh Sparkling Rose. And again, I have 4 of the small blending brushes. You want to be careful. The slits in these are kind of long and skinny, and so you have to be careful about how hard you push, because you can actually get underneath the stencil quite easily. Okay, so I am just lining up. The stencil is actually longer than the card front that I'm working on, so I am kind of leaving about 1/4 inch overhang on either side and going for the middle section. And just pushing it all down, getting it all lined up. I don't want anything showing on the bottom, and I don't want any ink oversplash on the bottom either. Okay, I'm just giving my brush a quick clean because I can't remember what ink I used on it last. Loading it up with some of the pink, and of course I have sped this up a little bit. You are going to go up and down and fill in all of these little candles. And this does take a little bit, but it's kind of fun. And you don't really have to hold on to the stencil because the grip mat is doing an excellent job of that. I highly recommend these things. I just got this. It's the second time I've used it, and I really do like it. And they come in a variety of sizes. I have the 8.5 by 5.5, I think it is, that I'm using for this one. And I like that size because it fits everything. And there's also a plastic grid that you can put underneath of it, so that you can line up everything on the grid, as on the mat as well. Okay, so I'm almost to the end of the pink, but I've got some blotchy spots, so I'm going to go back over some of these and try and even them out a little bit. It's not vital, but I think it kind of looks a little bit nicer. I'm also in most cases starting at the bottom so that it's a little bit darker at the bottom than it is on the top. Okay, so you got to gently peel this off because it is really stuck on there. And then we're going to add stencil number 2. And again, lining up along the bottom, I've lined it up right with the edge of the bottom of this art piece, and about 1/4 inch overhang on either side. And I'm pushing down on the top so that it sticks to the grip mat. Cleaning my second brush, and this is the blue. So Ocean from Simon Says Stamps. They're Pawsitively inks, which are very nice and juicy and perfect for doing stenciling. And just running along, adding the colors. Again, starting at the bottom, just in case, because you get that kind of darker when you've got the heavy amount of ink in there. So it's nice to have the shadow at the bottom instead of in the middle or at the top. And being consistent will kind of make it look like you meant to do that. Or at least that's what you can tell people. Okay, so again, a little bit of blotchy, so I'm going back over a couple of the sections just to even them out a little bit. Okay, and now we're switching over to purple, which is the Iris. Again, the Positively Saturated inks from Simon Says Stamps. And again, lining up my stencil. And on this final one, you can kind of move it around to wherever you want to fill it in. I've gone back to exactly the same spot. If you had a full piece of paper that was the exact same length as these stencils, it would be really easy to line them up, but I don't like making my slimline cards that big. So I am going with the 1/4 inch overhang on either side. And this purple is really juicy. Holy man, look at that. And it's also a very pretty color. Nice and dark. Okay, so again, zipping along, filling all these in. And then the fourth one is not actually a color. It's where we're going to add some highlights to the candles, and we're also going to add the little flame at the top of each of the candles. Okay, so I'm almost finished with the purples. Going back over, getting rid of any light spots. This is a really pretty purple. I need to do something else with this. Okay, there's my 3 colors. Isn't it pretty? So it takes a bit to line these ones up, and you can move them back and forth and change them out as you wish, because it's your card. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. You want to line up, and I have lined up, and I'm using the purple again, but I'm going over my lighter colors and adding the details. So the first one there you see is dots. I think the next one is dots as well. Yep. And just continue all the way across, adding the highlights as you see them over top of the lighter colors. I'm just double checking. There's a couple that are sitting over top of the dark purple, and of course purple on purple is not really going to show too well, so I grabbed a number 10 gel pen. This is white on a Sakura pen, and it works really well for going through the stencil and adding the lines and the dots onto the darker spots on the card. Okay, so I think I've got them all covered. It's good to peel this off. I'm checking to see if maybe I want to add one there. Do I or don't I? Yep, I'm going to put white on the pink on the very end. That one kind of missed out on getting anything. And then the purple one on the right-hand side. I think that should just about do it. Okay, so I've peeled this off, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it again, but I'm going to reposition it because I'm going to use the little flames at the top. And they run all the way along the top of the stencil, even though you can't really see it that well. And what I'm doing is I'm lining them up with the top of the candles. So now this time I'm pushing down on the bottom of the stencil so that it holds onto the grip mat. And I have gotten the Sunbeam ink, Simon Says Stamp Saturated, Positively Saturated, and a yellow blending brush, and I am just quickly adding yellow ink to the top of this. And there we are. We have our flickering candles. Aren't they cool? So now you have to really gently peel this off of the grip mat because it really does stick to it and it bends it a little bit. So we need to flatten this out before we're going to put it onto our card. And I am using some Big Mama foam tape on the back of this. I've already mounted it to the blue mask, and I am just adding the last couple of strips of the foam tape. I want this to stand up a little bit. Add a little bit of dimension because otherwise the card is completely flat. And just cutting off a couple things that are hanging over. Okay, I'm just going to audition to make sure that I'm liking where this is going to land. And we're going to use a pokey tool and peel off the backing of all of this foam so that we can mount it onto the front of our Slimline card. Okay, I'm mounting it onto the card, and the last thing I'm going to do with the card base is I am going to grab some yellow stickles and I'm going to put them over top of the flame. So I just want to start on a scrap piece of paper to make sure that it doesn't burp on me and get stuff where I don't want it. And I'm just zipping down, adding the stickles to each of the little flames so that now they're going to shiny flicker. Nice to have a little bit of bling on the card. And this, of course, goes all the way across the top. So it's quite substantial. It ends up being kind of a cool birthday card. And I do this last and I melt my card and everything first so that I can set this aside to dry so that I won't be tempted to play with it while I'm trying to finish the card. I've learned the hard way. You always end up sticking something in it when it's nice and wet. So set it aside and move on to something else for half an hour. There we go. We're going to move on to our little pandas. So again, this is the scrap that I cut off of my sheet of hammermill cardstock that I made my card base out of. So that was 8 by 8 1/4, and this is the leftover piece, and it is just the right size for doing 3 pandas, a crown, and a balloon. I just got to move them around to get them all in there. There we go. And I decided to use my teal Misty today because it matches the dyes from Syberia Designs. Teal is my favorite color, so I'm pretty excited that the dyes are so pretty as well. Okay, I'm using Simon Says Stamps Intense Black because it's Copic friendly, and I am going to do a tiny little bit of Copic highlighting on these guys, as well as coloring the crown and the balloon. And my ink pad's pretty juicy, but I haven't used these stamps very much, so they're not seasoned very well. But 2 stamps and we're pretty good. And I'm going to heat set this just off camera here just to get the ink to dry. And I'm sticking that scrap of paper in there just so I can clean those off later. Okay, let's get coloring. I'm using our 21 for the cheeks, just putting a little cheek on each of the pandas. A little bit of color goes a long way with these little guys. It just kind of livens them up just a little bit. I grabbed a bunch of the grays, but I end up only using one. It's the N0, just to add a really, really light shadow. I am pretending that the flickering of the candles is going to be the light at the top of the card, so the top of their heads, and so the bottom of their chin and under their tummies is getting just a little shadow. And I don't want it to be a dark one. That's why I'm just going with N1. Next, we're going to do the crown, and we're doing that in 3 shades of yellow. We've got Y11, Y15, and Y19, and I am flooding the entire area with the Y11, including the headband. Then I'm going to go at about halfway up with the Y15, again covering the headband. So you see that I get into the little crown there. I'm adding that darker color into the points, and I'm going to do the same thing with Y19, but I'm going to go only halfway through the second set that I just colored there. And then I'm going to come back with my Y11, and I'm going to blend those together. And I end up picking up a little bit of black in that left-hand corner. And I'm trying to get it off of my pen, but it's not really doing that. So I've decided that once I get this all glued together onto my card, I will add some of those yellow stickles, and that will hide it. So I'm not worrying about it too much. We're going to have a pink balloon today, and the pinks I'm using are R18, R83, and R85. And I'm just putting a little highlight square there, and I'm going to color around that. That's a fast and easy way of adding dimension when you're coloring. My little cheater. Okay, so my shadow is going to be on the left-hand side, so I'm coming in with just a partial coloring of R83, and then even half of that again with the R85. And then I'm going to come back out and I'm going to blend the entire thing with the R18 again. That's the lightest of the pinks. And these 3 colors blend really easily together, which is nice. Okay, and then of course we have dies to cut these out. So I'm going to tape all the dies down, and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine, and voila, we're going to have all of our little pandas ready for our card. These little guys are just too darn cute. I really love them. And I also really love teal dyes. Perfect color. And there's all my little pieces all ready to go. Off to the left-hand side, I've got my foiling machine. I am heating it up. I'm going to do the final step, and that's the sentiment. And we are going to be doing Birthday Wish. I'm using polished brass foil, and I'm foiling it onto a piece of Spellbinder's Lilac Blossom. It's a really pretty purple, kind of a medium shade. So I'm popping my foil in there, good side down, putting the paper on top. I like to use a couple of pieces of tape just to hold everything in place. And I'm waiting for that flicking light at the bottom to turn solid. That means that everything is hot enough and I can finish my foiling. And getting my mats ready, showing you my lovely mats. All that stuff in there is when you put your foil the wrong side up, it ends up on your mats instead of on your paper where it's supposed to go. So live and learn. I have really pretty foiled mats. And we're just sitting and waiting for that button to stop, which it just did. Okay, so I've got 2 mats and I've got a shim. I'm gently pulling that out, holding everything in place with my thumbs, placing it into my Platinum 6, and gently rolling it through. You only want to go once through. You don't want to go back again, just in case it bounces, and then you'll end up with 2 layers of foiling, and it won't be very pleasant. You'll be doing it over again. All right, there's our pretty sentiment. I'm just going to get this out of the way, and we'll start putting the card together. If you get a little bit of overfoiling like I did, you can take one of these mono sand erasers and just erase off the gold. It's kind of in between the letters. I don't know if you can really see it that well, but there is a little bit of it there, and these little sand erasers do a great job of getting rid of that. So I have a little bit in a few different places. Okay, and then I'm going to get the coordinating dies out and again tape them down and run them through my die cutting machine. Now we have all the pieces that we need to make the card, so we can just do a little bit of dry fitting or auditioning, as I like to call it. Got the sentiment kind of in the center. I want to see where I want to put the bears. I don't really have enough room to put that other one in between the sentiments, and it's going to cover it a little bit too much, so I think I might stick it inside. It's always nice to have a little surprise inside your card, because I kind of like this layout right like this. Okay, so I'm going to grab some adhesive. I'm using foam squares. I'm going to cut them in half, and we're going to mount all of this to the card. Okay, I'm going to put the sentiment in the center first. So I'm just kind of eyeballing. And I'm going to put Wish over on the right-hand side. And my little panda with the crown. I have a little bit of an over... what do you call it? Over blending. I got a little bit of blue on a pink candle. So that little guy on the right is covering up that little boo-boo. That's why you embellish last. Sometimes it determines where you're going to put your little pieces. The balloon is going there. And again, like I said, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to this guy, and I'm going to pop him on the inside of the card. Cute little surprise. There we go. So to cover up that little spot where we got the black ink, I'm adding a little bit of stickles to the crown, just so that it glimmers like it should. Okay, so here we are all finished, and then here's a pink one that I did as well. Everything I've used on today's card is linked underneath this video. There's also a link over to the blog. And I've got some additional pictures and information there for you. If you enjoyed today's project, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing. And until next time, toodles!